Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary, and very special guest, former Rutgers quarterback, Mike Teel, joins the program once again. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to talk some Rutgers football.
Yep, we're going to talk about how the season's gone so far and maybe how it compares to maybe one of Mike's seasons in his career at Rutgers. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Get ready for football and tailgating season with Knight and Day Apparel. Our apparel is designed to keep you comfortable and stylish from the pregame excitement to the final whistle. Whether you're grilling from the parking lot or cheering from the stands, our high-quality gear has you covered with unbeatable comfort and team spirit. Use our promo code Rutgers Rivals to get 10% off your purchase. Score big this season and keep shopping with Knight and Day Apparel. This podcast is also brought to you by BetOnline. Basketball fans, it's that time of year. The NBA is back, from opening tip to buzzer beaters. BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting, and has all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, breakdown, and live odds to bet on each game. It's not just the NBA. BetOnline has everything from football, Major League Baseball playoffs, NHL, to political props. Head to the website today and get in on the live action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Mike. So I think most fans would have accepted a 4-4 start to the season through 8 games, given how the schedule laid out. I just don't think anybody's happy with how we've gotten here on the journey, starting 4-0 and finishing the last month defeated 0-4. What's your general kind of pulse on how this season's gone for Rutgers football?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it big picture, right? You just said a lot of people would be happy to be 4-4, having a chance to win, 3 or 4 of your next, the last month of the season to get to 6-7 wins. But I think the expectations around the program in the beginning of the season, from the national publications to, the local media, to the fan base, were so high that, again, Rutgers is still in a developmental phase of their program where they're building, right? And I know the college landscape has changed through NIL and the portal, but the reality of it is, we're not going to be, major hitters in the portal every year where you bring in 20 new guys, 30 new guys, where you're spending $15 million. That's just not what the program is. That's not what I think Coach Schiano wants to be. I think you look at it, the way that the season has gone, you start 4-0, you win a tough game on the road, you beat Washington, and then it's a little bit of disappointment because it's a couple of what ifs, right? At Nebraska, have a chance to win that game on the road, favored against Wisconsin the following week. Then out at USC, you still have a chance to win that game. You cut it to a one-score game in the third quarter. So it's I think a little bit of frustration, but also, you can see the development within the program. You just got to get over that hump and start to win some of these games.
I want to start with, quarterback, basically. He's had a lot better games recently, Ethan Kalikmanis, but you've coached quarterbacks, you played quarterback. What do you kind of see from him this season?
I see inconsistency. I've seen some really good things and some things that haven't been so good. I think the challenge for any quarterback, and you can say that he's played for Kirk and all that stuff in Minnesota. The system, it might be the same terminology, but there's different concepts, there's different plays. It's a matter of getting yourself comfortable and being consistent. I think when he's gotten off and when Ethan's gotten off to a good start early on in games, he's played well. There's been times where he hasn't gotten off to a good start, and I think it's transitioned and carried on throughout the game. So, there's definitely been an upgrade in that position, I think, on the field this year. I think Kalikmanis has given Rutgers chances to win the games. He's thrown the ball consistently for the most part, but I think there's some times where, it's either in the pocket or, kind of feeling some things that aren't there. Just need to kind of settle down and make the throws and be a little more accurate to give your guys a chance. But, again, he's played well enough, I think, to win, almost every game that we've played so far. Throwing the ball down the field has been, a pleasant surprise. It's been nice to see because they've been able to stretch the defense, with Miller and with Ian Strong and some of these other receivers that have, I think, started to identify themselves as, top level receivers at Rutgers, which we haven't had in a while. Overall, I think he's done well. But the problem is there's been a lot of pressure on him to be almost perfect with the way these games have gone and the inability to run the ball at times. And that's hard.
Yeah, it's surprising given that we returned the Big Ten's leading rusher from last year. He's had a good season, but like you said, we have had a bit of trouble running the ball consistently as we've gotten into Big Ten play. What is it that you see about the running game where you can say, oh, that's why we're not doing it? Or is it just kind of like a lot of things that are piling up on one another right now?
I think it's a combination of a couple different things. And, first off is you have to win one-on-one battles, when you're blocking a defense, right? They've got guys on scholarship too that are good players also. You've got to be able to win one-on-ones. I think one of the biggest things for me is you see, 7, 8 guys in the box all the time. And the way college football has gone now, a coach told me a long time ago, you either read them or you block them. Right. So if you have 8 guys in the box, if you're not a true zone read team where you're reading defenders, you've got to block them. You got to find ways to block them. And to me, that means receivers getting in cut splits and digging out safeties. And you look at the Wisconsin game at home, their safety was at 7, 8 yards. And by the time the ball was snapped, he was at 5 yards at the line of scrimmage playing like a linebacker. And he had to have had over 10 tackles. I don't know what his stats were. The kid number 14. Yeah, and he's a really good player. Don't get me wrong. I get that. But I think you have to make a decision. You're either going to read him or you're going to block him. Because if there's an unblocked guy in these Big Ten teams that are in the upper echelon of the conference, if you have an unblocked guy at the line of scrimmage, 9 out of 10 times they're going to make the tackle. I know Kyle's one of the best running backs in the country, but an unblocked guy in the hole, or at linebacker level is tough to win those, one-on-ones consistently, play in and play out. So I think part of it is, identifying either going to read that guy and throw the ball in an RPO off of him or get that receiver to get in there and dig him out, and have a chance to at least get a hat on a hat. And then from there, that's when Kyle's going to break tackles. If there's a guy that's got half of a block, on a defender, that guy's not tackling Kyle. I guarantee you he's going to break that first tackle. When it's one-on-one, they have a much better shot to make that play. And I think that's been part of it. As the season has gone on, there's been some static looks in the run game where, a couple different formations kind of signal what they're going to do running the ball. I haven't broken down and studied it. I've just watched it with the naked eye. That would be my guess. I think there needs to be a little bit more creativity just to make the defense have to play a half a second slower, right? Like the defense lines up and they see a formation, they can have their eyes in one place and play fast. That's what teams want to do. I think you need to create a way to deceive their eyes, and nothing crazy, whether it's a shift or motion or maybe an unbalanced formation, but just give the defense a little bit to think about so they can't just play fast and play downhill right now. Make them react a little bit to you before they play. I think that could help too, because the season goes on, you're going to have to find some ways to run the ball a little bit better.
I was going to kind of ask you about that for the sole fact that they are running, 64% of the time. So it's like, why not stack the box, especially when they have an offensive line that's banged up? So I guess you kind of just hit what I was going to ask, but just changing schemes a little bit, trying to change up, maybe even trust the pass game a little more.
Yeah, I don't think you ever want to change schemes. You want to throw wrinkles into schemes. Like they are who they are as far as what they run, but again, make it look a little different. Do some things that show the defense something that they haven't seen before. And then, like you said too, Richie, I mean, you're going to have to throw the ball at a high completion percentage in early downs to help yourself, because I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit. The thing in the past couple of weeks that Rutgers has struggled extremely, has really struggled with, I should say, is third down. And I think that's a whole list of reasons why they struggle on third down that starts with first down and starts with getting into, better situations as the series goes on. But throwing the ball, you've got some receivers, you have, some guys that can find open windows and zone coverage and sit down. You don't need to take deep shots every play, just ways to get 4 or 5 yards to stay on schedule and continue to move forward.
Yeah, that's so true. Early in the season, we were converting at like one of the best rates in football. I think we were averaging like 3rd and 5 after we averaged about 3rd and 7 last year. UCLA, worst team in the country in terms of stopping third downs. They were allowing third downs at 57% on the season. Coming into the Rutgers game, we only converted on 33% of our third downs. So it's clearly an issue. But you were talking about lack of creativity. And at this point in the season, like as a play caller, your bag is basically emptied out. There's no more like things you have saved for some point special in the season, maybe a trick play here and there. But how difficult is it to continue to layer in concepts in terms of game planning for different opponents throughout each week? Like adding that in for a college offense that might, how difficult is that?
I think that's a philosophical question. How much do you want to do? How much do you want to add? I've never been in a room with the offensive staff, and Coach Ciano, so I don't know how they think of it. I would guess one of two things. You either want to put game plan specific plays in for that week, and maybe 2 or 3 that you can say on film, this formation yields this look, and I know that we're going to get this look because it's 95%, and there are formations that get upwards of that high percentage looks and coverages. So for that formation, we're going to add this concept this week, and it's a game plan specific. But the other school of thought is we're going to run our system, the stuff that we have in the system, and we'll formation it and motion it to get it to look a little different and make the defense not be able to cover, a shallow cross and a dig route, or, some basic, curl flat combinations, whatever it might be. I think that's where the strategy and the game plan component comes into it. That's when I was coaching. That's the part that I loved. I never coached at this high level, as a coordinator. But when I was in high school, we would add 1 to 2, maybe 3 concepts per week for game plan specific stuff. But then we would run our what I would call base stuff, our core, pass game or run game, and try to formation it differently every week. Try to shift in motion to it so it looked different. Just so, again, you didn't line up in one formation and you say, you got a 90% chance you're going to run an inside run play in a 2x2 set, right? So I think that's the challenge for any of the staffs right now. The plays have been run. There's tons of film. Injuries and lack of depth or whatever it might be, all kind of plays into this. So you want to make sure that first and foremost, you're able to identify who you need to block or who you need to read and execute on a high level. And then you have to win your one-on-one. So there's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah, it's a shame because early in the season, it seemed like they were layering in concepts. Like you think the Virginia Tech game, when they started layering in that split zone bluff or that split zone slice with Kenny Fletcher, we just ate them alive all game with that play. But it doesn't seem like we've kind of added that like defense breaking play week in and week out. And I don't know if that's because they had that bye week for Virginia Tech to go into it, and maybe they felt more comfortable adding that in the bye. Like you said, it might be a philosophical thing, but yeah, it just hasn't been there on both sides of the ball this year so far.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, there are wrinkles every week. I think a lot of it too is, at the tight end position, say, you're playing a true freshman and, another really young guy who hasn't played a lot of snaps just because of injuries. So, you want to make sure that, first and foremost, they're able to, execute the basics of what the offense is. And, it's harder to add wrinkles for younger guys that haven't played a lot. So that's kind of what you're fighting. Do you continue to add a lot and make, these guys go out and do it, or do you keep it more simple and let them execute what they practice, throughout training camp in the first half of the season? So, it's a challenge. It definitely is. But at the same time, I think you need to do some of that stuff to put yourself in a good position.
I'd say the thing that's driving me the most nuts, as of recent weeks, I should say, is the lack of creativity in the red zone specifically. It just seems like it's like fade route or bust at this point. Are you seeing anything different from your eyes? I know you obviously know the game better than most of everyone I know. So,
yeah, I mean, to the naked eye, I see the same thing. It's like you're trying to take a shot to put it in the end zone, or you're kind of running the ball. I always thought, in the red zone, when you get inside the 25-yard line, the field gets wider than it is longer. So, when I learned, and I didn't learn this until I got into the NFL, but my rookie year in the NFL with Greg Knapp, who was the offense coordinator in Seattle, we had a true third down package pass game. We had a true red zone package pass game. Like these red zone concepts, we would never run anywhere else in the field. They were strictly for the 25-yard line in because the field got wider than longer. So it was a lot of crossing routes. It was, the pick plays that aren't allowed, the rub plays, that type of stuff. I think you need to have that package when you get down into the red zone. Do we have it? I'm sure we do. Have we used it a ton? probably not as much as, as some of us would like to see. But also, to your point, Richie, we've been in the red zone and we've had chances to score touchdowns from the 2-yard line. You got to score touchdowns, right? Like, the fade balls are great and stuff, but when it comes down to it, you've got to manufacture first downs and you've got to find ways to get the ball in the end zone when you're down there tight.
Yeah.
And to kind of pile on that, like the personnel that they're choosing to run some of these plays with is just head scratching too. Like, why are we running fades to Ben Black? Why are we running fades to Damian Miller? Like, we have KJ Duff, who's shown to be a pretty good receiver, and he's probably the best jump ball guy we got who's healthy right now. Just like a lot of head scratching stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, listen, some of it too could be, it's an alert in the play. There might be a concept to the field, right? Because they're throwing it to the one receiver side, usually the short side. And, based on personnel and formation, sometimes Ben Black's there, sometimes Ian Strong's there, sometimes, whoever else might be out there. It might be an alert, and the quarterback might just be taking that alert, not realizing that it's not, Strong, who you want out there to throw the fade ball to. And there's always going to be a concept to the front side of the play. So it could be, the defense is telling me to take this one-on-one, so I'm going to throw it, and I'm not really looking at my personnel, which I think that's something in college that I never really realized too much. Like, I was fortunate, right? Kenny Britt was the single receiver most of the time when I threw the fade, but you didn't really think about personnel. I always thought, well, this is the defense that they're giving me. They're telling me to throw the ball here. That's where I'm going to throw it, rather than, well, that might not be my best fade ball catcher. Let me work the front field concept. I don't know how detailed that gets, but I could tell you that might be something that's come up, which is why some of those balls have went to the boundary. Or, they show in practice that they can do it. We're not there in practice every day watching it, and the coaches are. So, if they're doing it, I'm sure they're doing it for a reason. But that's kind of the thought process behind it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy just to kind of look back at that whole roster offensively, especially like
Incredible.
2 NFL receivers, 2 NFL backs, an offensive line that's basically entirely NFL guys that you played with. It's unbelievable to see how many of those guys made the NFL. You played in the NFL, you had your cup of coffee there. It's wild.
Makes it a lot easier, I'll tell you that much.
Sure is.
Switching to defense a little bit, I know it's been struggling from top to bottom, but what's your single issue that you see is the biggest reason why they're not having success out there?
It's something pretty simple and something that they talk about on day one. To me, it's tackling, right? They haven't tackled well. I've never, and I haven't sat on this side of the seat, in the media, for a long time, but I haven't seen a Coach Schiano coach team that hasn't tackled like this. And again, I think there's a lot of reasons why they haven't been great tacklers and they haven't gotten guys on the ground. But to me, the glaring thing is just not being able to get guys down on the ground and then ultimately creating big plays because of it. Between tackling and big plays, that's not something that we've seen from the defense in past years, and something that they're struggling with this year. And, I listened to Coach Schiano's press conference after USC. They need to get it fixed, right? And it's a matter of, do you play an injured guy that's 80%, or do you play a young guy that's 100% that, might have these mental errors? So it's a challenge because of injuries. But there's a lot of things that go into it,
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of fans are so upset with this season, because the identity of a Schiano team is typically toughness, it's defense, it's, basically like outgritting the other team. And like you said, tackling is all about effort and focus. And that's kind of the Chop mentality, is focusing on your job, focusing on what the task is at hand. And it feels like the Chop really isn't there this year. Is that something that you're getting a sense of as well?
Well, I think that the chop is to focus on a spot, right? And execute and do your job. I think that effort's there. I don't see really a lack of effort. Maybe later on in the Wisconsin game, as it kind of got away from us a little bit, but you watch the USC game, you watch Nebraska, the effort's there. I think it's the execution and the detail. So I don't think necessarily they've gotten off or away from the Chop. I think they need to focus more on it, and they need to focus on, the little details that are going to give them a chance to, to succeed on defense. And again, on defense, if you have one guy break down, for the most part, you're going to get exposed, right? So you need 11 guys flying to the football, 11 guys doing their job. And they haven't, for whatever reason, been able to do that. Now, on the flip side, you look at, the Wisconsin game, you're down your 2 starting defensive ends who are 2 of your better players on defense. You lose your best linebacker before the season. Your next best linebacker, and maybe even better, and Tareem Powell has been banged up all year. You're down 2 corners, a safety, like you're just beat to crap. And there's a lot of guys out there playing, so it makes it difficult. But that's not an excuse. You heard Coach Shiano talk about it. It's not an excuse, but that's the reality of it. And they hopefully the bye week this week gets them a little bit more healthy and gives them a chance to play a little bit better and kind of get back to the basics. Because again, if you look at it, all these guys banged up, they're not hitting in practice. They're not tackling in practice. And then it goes out and it shows on Saturday that they haven't been. And that's just the product of not being able to physically. So I think that's where, Coach was talking about, do you play an 80% guy who probably doesn't get a ton of practice reps, physically, or do you play a 100% guy that got all the reps and, might not, be as talented or as ready as that 80% guy. So that's the challenge that you're dealing with.
I feel like it's tough though too, and I could be wrong on this, but the fact that these guys are veterans that are even at 80%, like they've played enough snaps. Do they really need to go and practice and get, not get banged up, but get in the middle of these tackles and stuff? Or
I'm a believer that you do.
Okay.
There's no excuse for veterans that have played a lot of football for mental mistakes, for coverage busts and stuff like that. And I don't think we've had a lot of that, from the veteran guys. I think it's been more the physical part, and again, they've played a lot of football, but it's still a 20 to 22-year-old kid that hasn't, done a lifetime of it, where there's not, millions and millions of reps. They've played a lot, don't get me wrong, but I think, to be sharp and to be at that level in this conference against the teams that you're playing at, you need to be at your ultimate best every week. And it's really hard to get there when you're just not physically able to, get those reps during the week.
So football is a game of momentum in a lot of ways. We had the momentum early in the season. We've clearly lost basically all of that. It's so hard to regain that momentum, but you guys found a way in 2008, starting 1-5, a season that had a ton of expectations, your senior year, a ton of NFL players on that team. How hard is it to kind of catch the plane before it hits the ground, for lack of a better term, and turn that momentum around in season, for coming from somebody who did it or helped do it?
Yeah. I mean, it really takes one moment in a game to kind of get that thing going the right way. And for us, it's when the field goal hit the upright against UConn. I think we won 12-10.
Yep.
And then the following week we went out to Pittsburgh and, we finally scored a bunch of points on offense, and, it was kind of game on from there on out. But the biggest thing with that season, and, if anything, Coach Shiano and staff, there were a bunch of guys on that staff that went through that season back then, was it was never really finger pointing. It was never like, what do we need to do? It was just get back to work and let's try to do a little bit more than we did the week before. And I would suspect with the leadership that the team has, that's the same mentality. It's what do we need to do? How do we need to do it? Let's do it a little bit better, and let's just go out and play. And ultimately, you need something to kind of get that confidence and get the momentum behind the team. So you need to do something on the field, whether it's on offense, defense, special teams. But once you get that kind of play to kind of ignite everything and get going, it can go pretty quickly. And, again, we had a lot of veteran guys on that team back in 2008. There's a bunch of veteran guys now. So, it might be something like a Christian Dremel who's playing a little bit more recently to make a big catch and, score a touchdown again, or, on the defensive side, one of the DBs, Robert Longerbeam or Flip Dixon to make an interception or score a touchdown on defense, something like that just kind of ignites everything, and then everything starts to roll. But more than anything, it's just, you can't try to force it. You just have to do your job and have 11 other guys doing their job. And ultimately you get success by having that.
What's the vibe like in the locker room at like a midseason when you're like, what was it, 1-4, 1-5?
1-5,
and then like, does Shiano kind of trust the players to kind of try to bring you guys out of that funk, or is it more of like the coaching staff to try to bring you out of the funk? Trust the leaders of the team?
I think all hands on deck at that point. Like it was so miserable. I honestly don't remember it because it was that bad. It's like week in and week out, like banging your head against the wall. and when we went through it, I wasn't playing well. The offense wasn't playing well. We had some change in the system or the kind of the schematics behind what we were doing. But it's just when you're in it, like you're in it, and you can't really see anything else but what's right in front of you right now. So I think, it's all hands on deck. It's the training staff getting guys healthy. It's the strength staff continuing to, keep these guys strong. It's the coaching staff putting scheme and plans together, and then the players having trust in the coaching staff that they're doing everything they can to get them right. And then the players, you have to go out and execute, right? I mean, there's been plenty of times so far in the last couple of games where there's been opportunities for the player to make a play on the field on both sides of the ball, and special teams, and it hasn't gotten done. So, you need to look at how do we get that to get done? And that's what the staff will look at, I'm sure, all bye week. And, and then the players need to kind of take a look in the mirror and say, well, I got to get my job done every time I'm out there also.
Yeah, there has been just so much sputtering for every big play that we have. There, like, look at USC. We kick a field goal to make it 7-3. You think, okay, now we can get back into this. Then we let that kickoff go for like 80 yards and set up a short field. We score that touchdown and 2-point conversion with Dremel and the Philly special, and then the first defensive play we allow a 70-yard touchdown. Like, it seems like every time we take that one step forward, it's 2 steps back, and it's so hard to just kind of like turn that engine over and get it humming again. And I feel like that was probably the same for you guys in 2008, because you had a bunch of close losses. You lost at West Virginia by a touchdown. You lost at Cincinnati by 3 points. So you lost at Navy by 2 points in the heartbreaker at the end there. How hard is it just to kind of like get everything to kind of go forward when things are struggling, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to fall back on what you've been trained to do, and just continue to believe that what you're doing is the right thing. You just need to do it a little bit better, and everyone needs to do it a little bit better, and it's hard to think that way and believe it when you're in the moment, because again, like if you go back to that '08 season, we're in the game in the fourth quarter in the last possession, and 3 of those games that you just mentioned with a chance to either tie or win, and we're not able to win any of them. It's like, well, what do I need to do differently? And you kind of need to self scout and self evaluate yourself. What do I need to do differently to get a different result? Right? It's like, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Right? You need to do something a little bit different. Whether it's spending a little more time in the foam room, whether it's spending a little more time in the training room, whether it's spending a little more time on the field after practice. Whatever it is, you need to do something different to change the result that you're getting. And I'm sure that they're focused on trying to figure out what exactly needs to be done to change that result.
Now, we have 4 games left in the season, 4 fairly winnable games. We have Minnesota at home. We have Maryland on the road, who's always kind of had our number in that Mike Loxley offense. You have Illinois at home, who's ranked, I think, still. I know that they lost at Oregon this weekend. I don't know if they're still in the rankings, but they're roughly like a top 25 team. And then we finished off the season at Michigan State. Do you still think this team can turn things around and make a bowl game, or is it maybe too far gone at this point?
No, I don't think it's ever too far gone. You still have, a third left of the season. So there's still a ton to play for. I think a bye week comes at a really good time. Just, more than anything, take a day or two and just get away from it and come back refreshed mentally. Physically, you're going to be a lot better than you went into the game. Now, I wasn't happy that the game was on a Friday night against USC at 11 o'clock Eastern time. But from a player standpoint, you get an extra day. Even with the travel coming back, say you get home at 10:30 in the morning, you still get a full day of treatment or recovery compared to playing on a Friday or on a Saturday and then getting treatment on a Sunday. So that extra day plays into it. You look at the schedule. I think the challenging part right now with the back end of the schedule is all those teams are playing their best football of the year. I think Minnesota's playing really well. Maryland has started to play a little bit better. They beat USC, 2 weeks ago, and they had a big win this past weekend. Michigan State played Michigan tough this past weekend. So these teams, listen, it's the Big Ten, right? These teams each week are going to get better. And I think that's the one thing that Rutgers needs to focus on. You need to get better each week because these teams are continuing to get better. So, is it in front of them and do they have a chance? I think no question about it. And this is kind of coach speak. It starts with the first one. The first one's the most important one. If you don't get that, then you're back to the drawing board. But coming off of a bye week, getting some guys healthy, putting a good plan together and executing, I feel that the experience of the coaching staff and Coach Shiano coming into a bye week and getting through a bye week to go play a team should pay dividends for him. And, again, at the end of the day, you need to go out and you need to execute. So this first one for them will be the biggest one. And, then it'll be the next biggest and the next biggest until the season's over. But truly this first week, or this first game out of the bye week is going to be the most important one for them.
And I think it's a huge opportunity to gain some momentum back in the season because think about it, Minnesota, who was their quarterback last year? Ethan Kaliak-Manis. You don't think he wants to make a statement this next game? So if we can kind of rally around him, rally around Flip Dixon, who also used to play at Minnesota, rally around Coach Harris-Simiak, who also came over from Minnesota, like there's a way to kind of gel as a team and rally around those guys and want to win for them. And I think that could kind of be a force multiplier. Also coming off the bad week, leave all those bad vibes behind. And yeah, I like you said, I think this is like the season. If they don't win against Minnesota, I think it's really tough to see them turning it around. I think they really, really need to win this game.
Yeah, listen, a win fixes a lot of things. And you hear the phrase all the time, when you're winning, a lot of things go unnoticed. When you're losing, everything is noticed, right? So, not that there were issues in the beginning of the season with the scheme or the players or whatever, but when you're winning games, a lot of that stuff isn't seen by us. Now, I'm sure the coaching staff was watching it and saying, hey, we need to get this fixed because this is going to get us beat at some point. But to your point, you've got some guys who came over from Minnesota. You've got a huge opportunity to go out there and, more than anything, just kind of get yourself back on track at home. I think it's a huge chance for kind of the, as you would say, the train to get back on the track and get going in the right direction.
Greg comes up to you. He asked you to talk to the team. What's the single biggest piece of advice that you give to these guys?
It's a great question. I think where they are right now is staying in the moment and staying in between the walls of the building, right? There's a lot of people on the outside that are saying, you should be playing more, or you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Those people all care about the players and they want what's best for them, but they want what's best for that individual. They don't want what's best for the team. They want what's best for their son and their family, which is expected. That's how it should be. When you get into a team environment and you're around 120 guys and coaches and staff, it's truly about the team, right? You want to sacrifice for the team because that's ultimately what gets you the win. So, just staying locked in between those four walls when you're in the building, not listening to the outside noise. And then, I challenge each player on the team, do something a little bit more than you did the week before. Again, whether it's spending time in the training room, whether it's being, in the film room, just do a little bit more than you did the week before and try to challenge yourself to be a little bit more prepared and a little more healthy than you were the week before.
That's a great message, Mike. And we really appreciate you joining us today. That was a great closing thought, but do you have any other closing thoughts on Rutgers football this season or moving forward that you want to send the listeners off on?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, again, 4-0 with the expectations, everyone had these high hopes of being 12-0 and playing in the national championship and everything like that. Like, it's a process and it's a journey and it doesn't happen overnight. Like, can it happen a lot faster with the way college football is nowadays? Sure. Like, you don't need to bring in freshmen and develop them for 4 years before it happens. You can definitely get a jump in the portal and in NIL. Now, you need money in NIL and you need to really attack the portal for that to happen. But I think overall, if you look and you look at big picture and you think about where we were 5 years ago, 6 years ago from now, like the cupboard was bare. We were bad, right? It's just, we were bad. It wasn't fun to watch. There's life back in the program, even though the last couple of weeks haven't gone well. If you look at, take the Wisconsin game out, we're playing, and even so, don't even take the Wisconsin game out. It's 14-0 at halftime. You got a chance to cut it to a one-score game before half. Like, we're in these games. We're competing with these teams in these games. Now the challenge is finding a way to not compete in these games, finding a way to win these games. And I think that'll happen. When does it happen? Does it happen next week? Does it happen next season? I don't know. Like, we'll have to wait and find out and see what happens. But it's close and it's there and it's continuing to go in the right direction, which is, for me, something to be kind of proud of and to watch the staff and, everyone go through it on this side compared to being in it from the last time they had to rebuild and redo it. it's fun to watch, but it's a hell of a lot of work, and it's a hell of a lot of discipline week in and week out. And sometimes you just need to believe that it is going to happen, when you're sitting on this side as a fan or as a media person.
Totally agree. Well, thanks once again for joining us. You can see him, you can listen to him on Rutgers Football Radio Network for all the home games. Is there anything you want to plug or point to in terms of your social media, Mike?
No, just, if you're not in the stadium and you got to listen to it on the radio, and Chris Carlin, Eric LeGrand, and myself are on there, I think, we have some cool insights and good conversations. Take a listen if you get a chance. It'll be fun.
Definitely. You guys do a great job. Thanks again for listening. This has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast, signing off.